Tadparamparya vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya dhimahi Tanno Guruhu Prachodayate Om. Om Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Swagatam, Namaste, Namaskaram, Manakkam, Shubdinam, Suprapad. Welcome to yet another Scintillating Saturdays. And in fact, it's number 60 in this series. That's 60 weeks of us being together. What a beautiful achievement we are all making together. Today the topic is of Pratyahara. And in the modern world of yoga, Pratyahara has been neglected and forgotten. That is why I refer to it as the forgotten limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Most people have focused asana because asana has become the synonym for yoga for so many. We need to realize that yoga is much bigger. That infinite potential of yoga, that vast ocean of yoga, and we are just at the shore. The term Pratyahara refers to a sensory withdrawal, or more correctly, the withdrawal from the senses. Sensory withdrawal gives you the idea that if you close your eyes, close your ears, close your nose, close your mouth, you're practicing Pratyahara. Because you say, yes, sensory withdrawal. But actually the process of Pratyahara is an internal process. Because you have to withdraw yourself from the senses. So it is not shutting down the senses, but it is withdrawing yourself from the senses. In the scheme of Ashtanga Yoga of the great Maharishi, he tells us, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. You have the 5. Then you have Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. The 5th limb is Pratyahara. So you have Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, and then you have Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. If you divide it into 4 and 4. Often we find that Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara are considered the external limbs, Bahiranga, and Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi as the Antaranga, the internal limbs. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi are also Samyama. Swamiji had a different approach to this. He felt Pratyahara was already an Antaranga. Because if you understand Pratyahara, and by the end of today's talk, I hope you have a better perspective, you will realize Pratyahara is not about something external at all. It is a very internalized process. Because we have the 5 senses of cognition, Jnana Indriya, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, seeing. All of these are the senses of cognition, Jnana Indriya. We then also have the senses of action, where we have a sense of an active process which are called Karma Indriya. For example, the sense of locomotion that we obtain by the feet called Pada. The sense of dexterity that we obtain by the Pani, the hands. The sense of communication through the Vak. The sense of touching and being touched through Sparsha. So Pada, Pani, Payu, Upastha, all of these beautiful senses are coming together. The sense of reproduction, Upastha. The sense of elimination, Payu. These are the karma indriyas. Sparsha comes under jnana indriya. So 5 cognitive jnana indriyas. An indriya refers to a sense. Karma indriyas 5 making up 10 senses. The dasa indriya. Dasa means 10. Dasa indriya made up of the 5 jnana and 5 karma indriyas. And all of this is supervised by the super sense, which is called ekendriya. The super sense, which is the manas, mind. So normally you find the concept of the 5 jnana indriyas, the 5 karma indriyas, which are very much part of the sattvika aspect of ahankara in the scheme of Prakriti and Purusha and coming down to the Mahat, the Buddhi, the Ahankara, the Sattvika Ahankara becoming the sensory apparatus, the Tamasika Ahankara becoming the elements and the subtle elements, and the Rajas interacting with them. So under the Sattvika Ahankara, you have the experience of Manas, and under Manas, under the control of Manas, powered by Manas, the other 10 senses. Hence, you often find people talking of the 11 senses. Swamiji goes a step further. In his Ashtanga Yoga of Maharishi Patanjali, he defines 18 senses. 18. And he says, the sense of sight, the sense of sound, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the tactile sense, the sense of warmth, the sense of cold, the sense of pain, the sense of muscular coordination, the kinesthetic sense, the sense of balance, the sense of thirst, hunger and sex, the visceral senses, the sense of inner sight, the sense of inner hearing, the sense of inner smell, inner taste, the psychokinetic senses, the psychosympathetic senses of sympathy, empathy and pity, and the sense of higher compassion. Swamiji gives us this elaborate understanding of 18 senses. I remember one of our students from Australia many years ago. He said, oh my God, I thought Pratyahara I had to deal with 5 senses, and then I came to know it is not 5 but 5 plus 5, 10, and then the mind, which is 11, so 11. And then I read Swamiji's book, and now I realize I have to deal with 18 senses when I work on Pratyahara. It can actually put you into one of the stupefied stamba vritti modes if you are not careful. Pratyahara. Ahara means food. Pratya means to go against. You say food? Yes. All our senses are constantly going outward. The senses are externally directed in search of nourishment. The senses are externally directed in search of nourishment. The eyes want something to see. The ears want something to hear. The skin wants something to feel. There's a constant outward movement of the senses. They are moving outward constantly. What happens is Adi Shankara in the Viveka Chudamani, he talks about this. And he gives a very beautiful example. He references 5 creatures and how they get trapped. How these 5 creatures get trapped by the sensory apparatus. He talks about the deer. The deer getting attracted to the sound made by the hunter and getting trapped. The deer gets trapped by sound. The moth gets trapped by light. The elephant gets trapped by the sense of touch. The bee gets trapped by the sense of smell, and the fish gets trapped by the sense of taste. Deer, sound. Elephant, touch. Moth, sight. Bee, smell. Fish, taste. 5 creatures, he gives an example that they get entrapped and get caught by the hunter because of one sense. And he says, then what to do with the human being with all the 5 senses that are trapping us constantly? What a beautiful lesson. We are being trapped by sensory engagement because the senses are constantly going out and trying to latch on to something. It's called Vishaya. Maharishi Patanjali uses the term Vishaya. In English, you would say a thing. Now, it is not good English to keep on saying thing all the time. It is normally, when someone says, that thing and this thing, you say, you should say what that thing is, not use the term thing. But Maharishi Patanjali uses the word thing by saying Vishaya. And that our senses are constantly going outward, trying to latch on to something. The story I was telling Terry is from the Viveka Chudamani of Adi Shankara, where the concept of Vairagya is so well brought out. Transcending the senses through Vairagya. Viveka Chudamani, developing Viveka. I have talked about this in my Scintillating Saturdays on Vivekam. So just to give a reference there. Our senses are going out trying to latch on to something. The eyes want to go and see you. The ears want to go and hear you. The tongue wants to go and taste something. The skin wants to feel something. And this is why we have the sensory bombardment of modern life, where the senses are at the peak. The volume has been put on sky high for all the sensory engagement. And no wonder we are all trapped. We have become slaves of the senses. We have got trapped in the snare, the web of the senses. Indriya Jala. We talk about Maya Jala. Similarly, Indriya Jala. The play of the web of the senses. We have got trapped. We are constantly seeking sensory nourishment. Ahara. Maharishi Patanjali says, well, you sadhakas, if you really want to attain Kaivalya, there's some point where you have to start going inward. You have to move away from that. Pratyahara. You move away from sensory nourishment. So how do you do it? Well, you have the super sense, Ekendriya Manas. Because all the other 10 senses, like 5 Jnanendriya, 5 Karma Indriya, are subservient to Manas, mind, Ajna Chakra, prefrontal cortex. You know what I'm going to say next. The power of choice is the superpower of being human. Lies here. So Pratyahara is where you make a choice not to go outward in fulfilling your senses or attempting to fulfill them. It's a bottomless pit. They'll never be fulfilled. They'll never be satisfied because it's a bottomless pit, okay? It's a black hole. The black hole of the senses. You'll never full it. Yeah. It'll suck everything into it. You are withdrawing your mind, which is the super sense. The mind empowers all the activity of all the senses. So rather than trying to close your eyes and close your nose and cut off your penis, which people think is all of this, what you have to do is you don't desensitize yourself. You sensitize yourself so that your senses are working at the highest level of capacity, and then you pull the plug. Pulling the plug is withdrawal of the mind. This is why the power of Pratyahara lies in the mind, in the manas, in the Ajna chakra. The 5 spinal centers are related to the 5 Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. Suddenly you make that leap from the throat center to the brow center. And suddenly you have come out of the web of the senses and you have come into Pratyahara. So this is where the sensory engagement, and this is where Pratyahara comes in. This is the leap between your Vishuddha and Ajna. This leap of consciousness is where Pratyahara manifests. Till here there is no Pratyahara. Because all the lower 5, Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata and Vishuddha, they are powering your sensory apparatus, be it Jnana Indriya or Karma Indriya. It is happening on autopilot. It is happening as a reflex, as a reaction, as instinct. And suddenly up here at the Ajna, where the manas comes into play and the power of choice comes in, you can start to choose your response. You are seeing something. You can choose how you perceive it. You are hearing something. You can choose how you perceive it. You are smelling something. You can choose how you perceive it. This is where you move from reaction to response. You move from instinct to intuition. You move from reflex to reflective. And that is the jump where you go into Pratyahara. This is why when Swamiji says Pratyahara is part of the Antaranga, I completely agree with him, because it is not an externalized process. It is an internalized process. Some years ago, I was at a yoga festival. And there was a Swami on stage and he was giving a session on meditation. And I remember we sat, we didn't have much to do, so we said, let us sit and see what he has to say and all. And after the initial goodies, hello, how are you, have a nice day, be good, all of that, he said, we are now going to go into meditation. I said, wow, good. And he said, close your eyes. And now you are in Pratyahara. I'm not like, seriously? You close your eyes, you are in Pratyahara. Put cotton in your ears, you are in Pratyahara. What a warped sense of Pratyahara. Nobody knows what Pratyahara is. So they want to jump straight to meditation. No concentration also. Asana, meditation. Leave yama niyama, pranayama, maybe just huff and puff a bit. Jump straight. Pratyahara is not closing your eyes, because when you close your eyes and the mind is not under your control, you know what happens? I close my eyes, I'm like, how many of them are, responding to my talk? How many of them are giving likes and dislikes? My mind is now super active. I am starting to go into an overdrive of the sensory apparatus because I close my eyes. You close your ears and you are worried about what people are saying about you. Because you have closed, so you cannot hear it. You're like, what am I missing? You go into the hyperdrive. So it is not just the closing of the eyes. It is the withdrawal of the mind. This is why one of the beautiful metaphors for Pratyahara is that we withdraw from the senses just as the tortoise withdraws its 5 limbs. What a beautiful concept. The tortoise, the 4 legs and the head, and it withdraws into its shell. The withdrawal into the shell, where you come into yourself, as opposed to something that's always going out. A beautiful metaphor for Pratyahara is this withdrawal like a tortoise. Just like a kurma, you withdraw the limbs inward. This is a beautiful concept. This is where the core of Pratyahara lies. Not in closing your eyes, not in closing your mouth, Now, this concept of Pratyahara is given by Maharishi Patanjali at the end of the Sadhana Pada. Last two verses. And he says, Swa Vishaya Asamprayoge. Swa Vishaya Asamprayoge. Swa, the self. Vishaya, you remember things? So you are going and latching on to things. Lord Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. You start to think about things, and that's where your whole problem starts. You think about it and you get stuck. Because we latch onto it. Swa Vishaya, what do you need to do? There is a sangha, there is an attachment happening. Your sensory apparatus and the thing get attached. Lock and key mechanisms of enzymes. You are now stuck. You have to unstick yourself. Asamprayoge. Unsticking yourself from your attachment to the sensory objects. Swa Vishaya Asamprayoge Chittasya. Through the consciousness, this has to happen. Not closing your eyes. Swa Vishaya, as you have attached. Swa and Vishaya have become one. Swa Vishaya. Asamprayoge Chittasya. When you do that, Swarupanukara Iva. You come into your essential nature. Because as long as you are attaching to something, you are becoming that with which you have attached. When you attach to something, you become that. It's like a chameleon. And when that chameleon attaches to a green leaf, it becomes green. When it goes to a brown leaf, it becomes brown. A blue leaf, it becomes blue. A purple leaf, it becomes purple. When you attach to the senses, you become that. You identify with what you see. You identify with what you hear, you feel, you taste and touch. He says you have to disentangle yourself. Svavishaya asamprayoge chittasya swarupanukara. Then the swarupa will be there. Up to that time you have no swarupa. You are the indriya rupa. You have the indriya rupa. You have the vishaya rupa. You are not swarupa. Swa Vishaya Asamprayoge Chittasya Swarupanukara Iva Indriyanam Pratyahara. The second last verse of the Sadhana Pada. And this is where what happens? What happens is that you attain through this process a mastery. Tata parama vashyata indriyanam. You attain a mastery over the senses. The lower five centers, you are engaged with the senses. You are a slave to the senses. You are caught in the indriya jala, the web of the senses. Here, you move from being in Indriya Jala to Indriya Jaya. Maharishi Patanjali gives us these beautiful terms. Indriya Jaya, where you attain a state of mastery over the senses. You are not a slave of the senses anymore. You are the master because you have used the power of choice, the superpower of being human. Terry asks a very pertinent question. How can we hold the beauty and space for those who don't understand these concepts? I think what we need to do is be ourselves. We need to radiate the light that is deep within us. We need to be the teachings. And those who have ears to listen will listen. Those who have eyes to see will see. And those who don't, well, it's their choice for now and maybe later they will. We have to keep shining bright. The sun comes up every morning and shines bright whether you like it or not. because it's following its dharma, the dharma of being Surya. The dharma of being ourself, our swadharma, is to manifest these teachings. By manifesting these teachings without judgmentalism. Everybody is going to attain Kaivalya someday, okay? There's no cursed soul in yoga. There's no cursed soul. There's no damned soul in yoga. Everybody is going to make Kaivalya someday. So, what's the problem? We are on our own journey. Let us be like the sun. Let us rise and shine. As Amma said yesterday, it's not about having a good day, but about making a good day. Can we manifest those teachings? When we are caught in the snare, it is Indriya Jala, you transcend it into Indriya Jaya. And that is why Tata Paramavashyata, supreme mastery over the senses, because you have transcended the senses. The process of yoga is a transformative process for the purpose of transcendence. Transformative transcendence is yoga. That is where you have to come from Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Ajna, and go into Sahasrara and connect to the Mahakarana chakras. Pratyahara is that withdrawal from the senses. And this is why when we write Pratyahara and we say sensory withdrawal, we are actually giving the wrong impression. It is more correctly withdrawal from the senses. You know, there are many practices where this concept comes in. This concept comes in, for example, when you do the Brahmari Pranayama. And the Brahmari Pranayama is one of those Samyama Pranayamas according to Swamiji's classification. You have the Adama, then you have the Samyama, and then you have the Shakti Pranayamas. In the Madhyama or Samyama Pranayama, Swamiji gives the Brahmari, the bee, humming bee, bumblebee breathing. And this, when you make this sound, which is part of the Nada Anusandhana also, the process of Nada Anusandhana, what is very important is that you use a mudra which is called Shanmukhi Mudra, where you close the ears, you close the eyes, the nose, the lips. And this mudra is Shanmukhi, six-faced gesture. When you say, Dr. Ananda, you said six. But we are talking of the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the skin. Yes, five senses plus mind, manas. When you do the Shanmukhi mudra, you are gesturing. It's a mudra. You are gesturing that you wish to go into a state of Pratyahara. You are setting the pathway of intention. You are setting your pathway of intention towards Pratyahara when you perform the Shanmukhi Mudra, which is also called, interestingly, Yoni Mudra. Yoni refers to the womb. So when the baby is in the mother's womb, it's protected from all the external, extraneous stimuli by the comfort zone of that womb. It's there in the sac with the fluid, in that beautiful space of love, compassion, care, and it feels so much at ease. It feels safe. It feels wanted. It feels loved. And it's in a state of beautiful calmness. When you perform Shanmukhi Mudra or Yoni Mudra, you are coming into that same type of pre-embryonic state, a state of ease. And that is why when you do the Brahmari, with this, all the vibrations are happening within you. It is a beautiful samyama practice. It's a beautiful practice of introspection, self-reflection. And you go inward and you find that beautiful sense of bliss. And that is why our teachings, the traditional teachings of yoga say when you do Brahmari, you have an unparalleled sense of ease and bliss. Because the natural santosha, contentment, the niyama santosha is being strengthened. You are not running out in search of, I want more, I want more, I want more, dil mange more. You are not running outwards, dil mange more, I want more, I want more, I want more. No. You are saying, dil mange less. The heart needs less. As one of my teachers used to say, all you need is less. That is the Pratyahara moment. When you do the Shanmukhi Yoni Mudra and you perform the Brahmari, you are having that beautiful sense of santosha. Santoshat anuttama sukha labha. An unparalleled sense of ease comes into you. And a beautiful paramanandam, a beautiful sense of bliss manifests in your heart through that process. Now you want to add to the Pratyahara practice here? Sit in Padmasana. When you sit in Padmasana, what is happening? You have locked up your lower limb, Pada. So you are not going any place. You lock up your hands there in the mudra, Pani. You are not going to the toilet at that time, Payu. You are not having sex and having that reproductive sense at that time. So the upastha is taken care and you are focusing your vocal apparatus on the sound, so the vak. When you sit in Padmasana performing Shanmukhi Mudra and perform Brahmari, the 5 karma indriyas, the 5 jnana indriyas are all brought under a sense of control, the power of choice. We are bringing that sense of control and then focusing towards the nada anusandhana. And at that moment, what a beautiful sense of bliss and ease comes within us. Because you have gone in. Completely you have gone in. And that is why Pratyahara and Santosha, they go together. Giving us that anuttama sukha labha, that unparalleled sense of ease and the Paramanandam. When we talk about Pratyahara, one of the very beautiful techniques of Pratyahara given by Swamiji is called the prana kriya. And the prana kriya works on strengthening the ajna. And in this, you sit again in a comfortable seated posture. If Padmasana is possible, please do it. Locking yourself up, and then you bring your hands together into the yoga mudra, where you link both the limbs and that yoking of the limbs with the hand on the lap. So again, you have created a sense of being locked up. You have created a sense of self-containment. You are self-content, self-contained, self-satisfied. Atma vashye videyatma, says Bhagavad Gita. Having that sense of being satisfied with yourself, self-content. That type of feeling is there. You then start to focus on the midpoint between the eyebrows, Bhru Madhya. Now from the Bhru Madhya, you go in a few inches into your skull. Anatomically, it is the location where your hypothalamo-pituitary connection is there. The hypothalamus, which is part of the nervous system, the pituitary, which is part of the endocrine system, that is the zone where they are connecting, hypothalamo-pituitary axis. And the pituitary is in a fossa. It's in a very safe, bony cave. Pituitary has that cave in which you have that wonderful nerve supply called the cavernous plexus. Cavern, a big cave, cavernous plexus around the pituitary. It's well innervated. When you go in from the Bhru Madhya, the midpoint between the eyebrows, you go in a few inches, you come to a point which is called the Ajna Bindu. So just as we have the Ajna Chakra, The Ajna chakra is one of the chakras which within it has a bindu also. A bindu. It's called the Ajna bindu. So when you go in, you are connecting to the Ajna bindu. Now here the process of the prana kriya is the moving of the prana through the process of self-direction. That's why it's a kriya. So you are moving the prana directed by the self, power of choice. And what you do is that you take your mind and let that energy go deep into your folds of your brain, into that Ajna bindu. Now as you breathe in, the breath starts to move forward. So from the Ajna bindu, it comes through the Bhumadhya bindu and it comes out for a couple of feet in front of you. So it goes out. You have the prana being channeled out a few feet, and as you breathe out, that same prana is being brought back with the breath through the Bhumadhya to settle into the Ajna. So every time you breathe in, you are moving the prana through the manas. Yato manat tata prana. Through the manas, the manas chakra, which is the manas is the part of the Ajna here. Through the manas, you are moving the prana. So the flow of breathing in and moving forward, breathing out and coming back within yourself into the folds of the brain. So the processes of breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could use a Sukha Pranayama. You could also bring out the Savitri Pranayama here. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3. You will notice that as we breathe in, we are going out into the world. But as we breathe out, we are withdrawing ourselves inward. So that finally, that final out breath, after which you will have an automatic enjoyment of a Kevala Kumbhaka. You will not feel like breathing. You would have settled into that Ajna bindu. You will settle into that Ajna bindu. And you have strengthened that Ajna, that power of intuition, the power of choice. You have strengthened the manas, the mind that now has come in charge of the sensory apparatus. You have gone inside and settled yourself, just as the tortoise withdrawing its limbs and coming into itself. You have done that when you do this process. And this process of the prana kriya, it is a Pratyahara kriya in the Gitananda teachings. A very beautiful practice to start actually transcending the sensory apparatus. You know, all your senses, they evoke a limbic response. And the Ajna bindu is right in the center of the whole limbic system. And so once you start to go and get established in your own nature, Swarupanukara iva indriyanam. Instead of being Swabhishaya, you have gone Asamprayoge Chittasya Swarupanukara. You have gone inside. And the prana kriya is a technique that brings into practice this exact verse of Maharishi Patanjali. And it becomes a very beautiful tool to then enhance one's capacity. You enhance your capacity for contemplation. And this is why Pratyahara for me is a bridge. The bridge between the external and the internal. And this is why when people try to say Pratyahara is an external limb and Bahiranga, it doesn't click to me. as a musician, it just doesn't sound right. Because it is such an important bridge of going within. And without this, it's very difficult to contemplate, let alone go into a state of dhyanam, meditation and absorption samadhi. This is why Pratyahara has that link between the external limbs and the internal limbs. Through Yama Niyama, you have set the foundation. Through Asana Pranayama, you have enhanced your capacity and created vitality and created the peak of excellence. And now you start the process of withdrawing. You start the process of withdrawing inward, because that inner journey is the most important journey of it all. And you start to go in. Pratyahara. That is why in the prana kriya, Pratyahara, it's like you're going back. Instead of going towards the ahara, you're going Pratyahara. You are going inward. And often people get confused. They say, breathe in and go out. They get confused. They say, shouldn't it breathe in and go in? But then what will happen? When you breathe out, you go out and you are caught out there. You want to go out, but then come in. Be someone who can be in the world of the senses. You know, Lord Krishna gives us a beautiful definition of a yogi, a yoga ruda. A yoga ruda is the rude yogi. He says this yoga ruda is someone who can be in the sensory world but not caught up in it. He says, Yadahi nendriyarteshu na indriya artha. You know, normally everybody is caught up in the indriya artha. They are caught up in the things of the senses. He says, when you are no longer caught up in sensory engagement, yada, at that point, thence, yadahi na indriya, nendriyarteshu, na karmasu anushajjate. You are not caught up in all the karma because you have moved into that nishkama mode. Again, part of that vairagya, part of the pratyahara is disentangling from your attachment even to your action. You are not attached to your senses, you are not attached to the fruits of the action. Sarva sankalpa samnyasi, even the highest of aspirations, you have been able to transcend. At that point, yoga ruda tada uchyate. You are a yoga ruda. That is what a yogi is. A yogi is one who, when are you in the state of yoga? When you are no longer caught up with the senses. You are no longer caught up in your actions and their attachment to it. You have transcended all the desires, even of the highest sankalpa, sarva sankalpa samnyasi, even that you have let go. Yoga ruda tada uchyate. Then you are in that state of yoga. Not when you just buy a yoga mat and sign up for a yoga class. This modern idea that everybody who comes to class is a yogi. Yesterday I saw a post from someone. Well, technically, women cannot be yogis. They have to be yoginis. But I'm going to still call myself a yogi because it's me and I'm going to do it. And this egotistical bluster. You know, that state of being a yogi. But you know, there was this thing that I'm going to call myself a yogi and not a yogini. You know, first of all, are you a yogi and yogini? No. At the most, we are a yoga sadhaka and yoga sadhaki. Someone who's on this path or doing our sadhana. We can be a potential yogi. And that's why I said, you know, if I refer to a man and I say her, you're not going to like it. If I refer to a woman and say him, you're not going to like it. Yogi and yogini are like that. But you know, people get so stuck in this modern prejudice And then they want to, oh my God, I don't know. They look at yoga through such a perverted prism. That distorted, perverted prism is beyond my comprehension. It's on a different planet for me. Ravichandranji, you have asked a question. How does one ensure that one makes an appropriate choice with the power of choice? The only way is Swadhyaya, your yogic selfie. Last night I was talking to Shailaja Menon about it. Tapas Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhana. And I tell you, Swadhyaya is such a key element in this. Because we all believe we are correct. I am correct because I am me. And that is the biggest mistake we make. When you turn the camera on yourself, that's why I call it the yogic selfie. When you turn the camera on yourself and you are able to observe yourself without identification, without justification, without condemnation, as Ammaji so beautifully puts it. When you reflect on the self, Atma Vichara is the key to knowing the difference. Atma Vichara, start to reflect on the self. Self-inquiry, self-reflection. Reflective self-learning. It's a new term in all this modern teaching learning. Reflective self-learning. Atma Vichara, Swadhyaya. That is the only way we'll actually know whether our choice is right or wrong. And as we grow, and we learn from the old lessons. That's why Smriti is an important component for a sadhaka. Along with Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, Purvaka, Itaresham. Smriti, to be able to learn from previous mistakes. I made some choices 10 years ago, which I thought were right at that time and now I know are not right. May I learn from it so that I don't keep making that same mistake again and again and again. Swamiji used to say the definition of insanity is to do the same thing again and again but expect a different outcome. And I really love that. People do the same thing but they want a different outcome and then they blame somebody. If you want a different outcome, do it differently. If you want a different outcome, do it differently. If you want to make a chapati, do the steps to make a chapati. But you keep on making the chapati and you say, I keep on expecting it to be a dosa. If you want a dosa, you have to make it differently. If you want a chapati, you have to make it differently. So you made a chapati and you came out with a chapati. You realize that is not the way to make a chapati. Go back, learn how to make a dosa and make a dosa. This is called learning from your mistakes. If you want a different outcome, do it differently. People go and knock on the door and, hit the head on the door. It's like, they keep on hitting the head on that door and they forget that there's a door, that's not the door, that's the locked door. There's an open door. Turn your head around and go out the open door if you want to go out. But no, I'm going to hit my head on this door until it opens. Yeah, good luck. Either you'll have a broken door or a broken head, or, that's your whole life mission is hitting your head on the door. That's how people are. If you want to do it differently, if you want a different outcome, do it differently. And this is why sadhana, 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 so important. You cannot buy your way into the higher states of yoga. You cannot bribe your way. They think, oh, if I'm nice to the guru, it will come. Nah, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. Self-effort is the currency of spirituality. And the ego, yes, Terry, the biggest problem is the ego. The ahankara wants us to always be right. And this is why you can never change anyone except yourself. You can never change anyone. We always want to go out and change everyone. You cannot change anyone because the ego is so strong. The ego is such a barrier. And that is why it is so important for us to live the teachings. The only way you can bring about a change in others is by you living the teachings, them witnessing it, and if they are ready to change, they will change. And if they are not ready to change, they'll nail you up on the cross, just like happened to Jesus, or burn you at the stake, as happened to so many amazing women of spirit who people couldn't understand them and they called them witches and burned them. So just because you are transforming yourself, just because you are growing, don't expect the world to love you for it, okay? Most probably they will be jealous of you, and out of jealousy, Matsarya will come hate. So be ready for it. And sometimes those who are closest to us, sometimes people who are closest to us may be the biggest test. And because they don't want you to change, because they want you to be just that same old thing that they could resonate with. And today as you grow, maybe they cannot resonate with you. As you climb the ladder, sometimes you may feel a bit lonely. Well, Yudhishthira, when he went up the Himalayas, one by one, all the brothers, Draupadi, everybody fell away. At the end, he was there with his companion dog, right? And this is why the importance of Sangha, the importance of supporting each other, the importance of being a cheerleader. Whenever I see one of you doing good things, why do I cheer you on? Shailaja keeps on telling me, Dr. Ananda, you are so busy, but still you give me time. Yes, because you are doing good. Nilachal, why do I support what you do? Because you are doing good. Avani, Niyati, your beautiful work. This is why I keep on supporting each and every one of you. And I am grateful for each and every one of your support. Be it the work Malini is doing to stand up for the Indian culture and the Indian cultural ethos. Be it the work that Muggs, Terry and others are doing through the Soya to keep the yoga in yoga itself. Despite all the challenges, the work that so many of you are doing out there in the world, to be the change, to stand up for yoga. Stand up for yoga doesn't mean go and throw stones at everybody. Stand up for yoga doesn't mean you get up and say, hey, I know it all. No. Stand up for yoga means you be what yoga is. You embody yoga. Every thought, word and deed of yours should embody yoga so much that the world starts to realize what yoga is. Focus on what yoga is. Focus on what yoga is. Manifest it through your life. That is the greatest dakshina we can give yoga. That is the greatest work we can give yoga. That is the greatest gift we can give back to yoga. As I tell Ammaji every day, my life is my offering to you. My life is my offering to Ammaji and Swamaji. My life is my offering to yoga. That should be their gift. Not that you go out and pluck a flower and say, hey, Gurudev, here it's at your feet. Swamaji used to often say, I know what God feels like. He used to say, my students go out into my garden, pluck my flowers, which I have planted and grown and tended, and come and give it to me as Guru Dakshina. He said, I really know what God feels like. We take everything that God has given and we go and we say, hey, I am giving you. Me giving you God. What can you give God? What can you give the universe that is not already belonging to the universe? What can you give God that doesn't already belong to God? You want an answer? Your self-effort. Your self-effort is what you can give God. Your self-effort is what you can give the Guru. Your self-effort is what you can give yoga. Your self-effort is what you can give your own Atma. And at that point, Uddhaved Atma Atmanam comes alive. You are lifting yourself. You are lifting yourself by your own self. May each and every one of us be blessed by yoga. May we be worthy of that blessing, having that yogyata. May we have that gratitude, kritagnyata, And may we move out of that snare, the web of the senses, the Indriya Jala, moving into that Indriya Jaya, attaining that Parama Vashyata Indriyanam, and growing in spirit. Dhanyavadaha, Namaste, Grazie, Danke, Ayubovan, Ayushman Bhava. May we all be blessed. May we be a blessing wherever we are. And may the world be a better place because of our self-efforts. Nandri, Vanakkam.